Hey guys, it's Dave again from GuitarBreakdown.com, and today we're going to break down the intro chord part and melody, the main melody of Guthrie Govan's Bad Asteroid song. We've had a lot of requests for this, especially after putting up the jazzy section solo breakdown a couple weeks ago of this song. We've had a lot of requests we've had a few people asking, can you do the entire song? Some people asking, I've been having trouble with the intro melody line. Could you break that down and explain it? So anyway, we unfortunately can't do the whole transcription, and I wouldn't want to because I'm sure Guthrie at some point is going to put out a transcription book. So I don't want to kind of step on those toes at some point. But the intro chords, it's really actually kind of a simple thing. It's based off of 2 chords, and it's just he's got these little embellishments he does on everything, even the melody at the beginning. The melody is pretty simple. It's just I think a lot of people might be having problems with the articulation of it, because you have to, in order to get that fluidity, there's a certain way you have to pick certain notes and legato other notes. And then the cool thing, in between all those phrases, he does certain little things like scraping strings and then hitting a harmonic on another string. So anyway, there's a few subtleties. As far as notes, it's not very complicated. It's pretty much straightforward, so we're not going to get crazy into theory or anything. I'm just going to go over the notes and the technique. And then, yeah, and hopefully this will be rather a quick lesson. But I hope this fulfills the requests that we've gotten over the past few weeks, actually the past few months on this one. So I hope you enjoy this, and let's get to the lesson. Thanks. All right, so let's start out with the beginning chord thing that he does at the beginning of the song. Basically, the first chord is an E minor 11 chord. It has an 11 and a 11 and a ninth in it. It's basically, it's this shape that we've done in the Guthrie lesson I did a long time ago, a Guthrie jazzy lick or something. It was a chord that was cycled around, and it's a real popular chord. It's just very open and airy. So what it is you're basically barring you're playing an open E string. That's the bass note. And then your first finger is barring the second fret of all the other strings. So your A, D, G, B, and E string. But then your fourth finger plays the 5th fret on the D string, and your second finger plays the 3rd fret of the B string. So it's basically A string 2nd fret, D string 5th fret, G string 2nd fret, B string 3rd fret, and E string is the 2nd fret. So And I'll try and write it up here, the little chord chart. So that's the first chord. Now the second chord is basically a G chord, but you're not playing the A string. And you're basically, I don't know if he's playing that open D string, he might be, or he might just be playing the two notes, the first finger on the second fret of the G string, and third finger on the third fret of the B string. And that, I'm sorry, that's the first finger on the second fret of the G string, third finger on the D note, third fret of the B string, and your second finger is playing the bass note, the third fret of the E string, which is your G note. And he might be just playing those two notes, but I think he's also playing that open D note. So now what he does at the beginning, he plays the low E string, then he plays that B note, which your first finger's on the second fret. Then he plays with these four fingers the D, G, B, and E string with that first chord form, the E minor 11 chord. So, and it's kind of muted. And then he lets that ring out. Now when he goes to this second chord, he hammers on from the open E to the third fret of the E string, which is the G note. So it's, and then he plucks the D string, G string, and B string in that G shape that we had. So, and now this G shape, again, is just your regular G chord with your root. This open D string is your fifth of the chord. That first note there is your ninth. Your second finger on the second fret of the G string is the ninth. And then this D note is, again, your fifth. So basically this is a G major 9 chord. So you have... And there he's keeping his fingers on those notes to let it ring out, and then he hammers on with the pinky the fourth fret of the G string, hammers on the fourth fret of the G string, pulls off to that second fret of the G string, pulls off to the open string, and then hammers back on that second fret. That's all on the G string. So it's basically, so it's, and then he plucks the open E string after he hammers back on that second fret of the G string. So it's, now another thing that I've seen him do live on the recording, I don't think he did this, but live I've seen him do, instead of just hammering on, instead of just hammering on like that, I've seen him hammer on the second fret and then slide up. So, so you get that. So. Now the first two times he goes through this, he does that, then he does that again, and sometimes he doesn't pluck that high E string as loudly. I think the second time it's a little lighter, but he does that 3 times, and then the fourth time it's, he just holds that out, and then he taps up here on somewhere either around the 14th and 15th fret, the G, D, G, and B string. And it's really more or less the G and the B string that are getting those harmonics. So it's... Then he goes, so that you could think of that as one go around. Now the second go around, he does this. He goes. Now those chords that he plays there, I'm not sure exactly what he's playing. There's one of 3 different versions that he's playing. The first chord is either this sus4 chord, which is basically your 3rd finger on the 9th fret of the D string, 4th fingers on the 9th fret of the G string, 1st finger bars the 7th fret of the B and the E string. So now that could be the first possibility. And then he does that 2 more times. And then he goes down to this chord, which is the same shape, moved down a whole step. So your 3rd finger's on the 7th fret of the D string, 4th finger's on the 7th fret of the G string, and your 1st finger bars the 5th fret of both the B and the E string. So now I don't think that's what he's doing. I didn't take enough time to transcribe this and really slow it down and listen to it. But what I think he's doing instead of that is this. That's the first chord. Then the second chord is that one I just showed you. Then the third chord is this. I think that's what he's playing. So the first stab of that chord is basically your 1st finger bars the 7th fret of the D, G, B, and E string. And your 3rd finger plays the 9th fret of the G string. So that's 7, 9, 7, 7. Instead of 9, 9, 7, 7. So you hear the differences. Or, and I think that's the first stab. Then he goes to the second shape. Then the last chord is basically the same thing as the moving that one shape down a whole step, except you take that top note on the D string, instead on the 7th fret, you play on the 9th fret. So you have the pinky on the 9th fret of the D string, 2nd finger on the 7th fret of the G string, and then your 1st finger bars the 5th fret of the B and E string. So that's. So I think that's how it goes. Now, after those chord stabs, it goes down to this chord. What this chord is, it's basically that G chord, the first G chord I showed you. But instead of your root on the E string, G note, on the 3rd fret, you're going to have your root on the 5th fret, which is an octave up, on using your pinky on the 5th fret of the D string. And then basically you have this D major shape. So your 1st finger bars the 2nd fret of the G string, 2nd finger goes on the 3rd fret of the B string, and then your 1st finger continues to bar the 2nd fret of the E string. So you have this. And he goes right up that scale, or that chord. And then after that, he plays this double stop. And you barely hear him pull that off at the very end, right before he goes up again. But that's basically holding your 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, which is the same as what you had before, but you're playing those 2 notes, and you're hammering on with your 3rd finger the 4th fret of the G string. And then you let that off right before. So you go. And then what he plays next is he plays that same exact chord, except he lifts the bar from his 1st finger, so he plays an open E string. So the first chord is, and the second one is. So that whole thing is. then he goes into the lead melody with a clean tone, and we'll get into that next. But this section right here, again, you could think of that as major pentatonic. You know, just. All right, so let's get into the lead melody.